I'm assuming this is working. Too loud? Sound good? Cool. Okay, my name's Todd Blatt. I have a presentation about crowdsourced 3D printing that I want to show you. I want to tell you a little bit about myself and what I do. I run a company called Custom 3D Stuff. We are based in Baltimore, so it was an easy trip for me to get here. I started it in 2011. I've been making 3D design since '97. I've been doing 3D printing since 2004, and then I started my company in 2011 officially. I make a lot of jewelry, so a lot of these 3D printed earrings and shapes that you couldn't make other ways outside of traditional, outside of 3D printing. I make a lot of Star Wars props, movie prop replicas for collectors, and these aren't like just desktop FTM prints. They're usually high-end, made from the actual metal or the real parts that they used when they made the movie props. So this is like the ring that Rose Tico had in The Last Jedi, and all the way down to the disassembling the mechanical iris that they used and casting the band in brass and chemical etching the faceplate so it really functions. I do short runs of projects for collectors. So this is the ring from the Twin Peaks TV show. They commissioned me to make rings for the new show, so it was the actual filming. And then I made some of these for collectors. This is a cast bronze polished ring from Doctor Strange. And I made a whole bunch of these Hodor doorstops, so a lot of like tongue-in-cheek jokes. And then small things and big things, full-size scale Han Solo and carbonite, and then silver rings. In 2013, I started a fun project. It was just something that I wanted to do. People started getting these 3D printers, and I figured that they'd want to be a part of a fun project and work with other people, because in the past, when you have blueprints or something you're working by yourself, and you can work in your own shop. But now that we have the internet plus 3D printing, we're able to connect with other makers and say, hey, let's all work together on one project. So over the weekend, Marty there, who's on the left, built the website, wethebuilders.com, with the help of the rest of the team. Michael Raphael in the back right in the red shirt 3D scanned a sculpture. And I'll go through those steps here. If you haven't heard yet, it's called wethebuilders.com. You can download a part, print it out, and send it to us. So if you haven't signed up yet, you can sign up for the next project, and that's the URL, is wethebuilders.com. So right now, it's basically Marty and I, aside from that original weekend where we had this team. That's the sculptor of our third project is wearing the leather jacket on the right, named Ryan Kittleson. So I'll show you his sculpture shortly. So these are the first 4 sculptures. I have them here today. From left to right, we have the George Crowdsourcington, Benjamin Frankenstein, Rosie the Riveter, and Edgar Allan Print. So these were all done by the community. People like you who have a 3D printer or access to one, and then submitted the parts to us after printing and mailed it to us. You can see the original sculpture. The first one was, it was sculpted in Italy about 185 years ago and then sent to Baltimore. It's of a young George Washington, and it is 33 inches tall, and it lives in the original Washington Monument in Baltimore. So for a couple of months while they were doing renovations, we put it in they put it in the Walters Art Museum in Baltimore, which is right down the street. And we were able to 3D scan it there, and then use that for the project. On the right is a miniature of the Houdon bust of George Washington, of Ben Franklin, and that one's in the Metropolitan Museum of Art, 22 inches tall. But we scanned that like 9-inch sculpture and scaled it up to be the same size as George. Then Ryan sculpted this one digitally for Poe, and this one we separated it into 2 colors. So for George and Ben, it was free for all. You can print any color you want. Just make sure the outside surface stays the same. For Poe, it was our first time saying we want either light or dark parts. So we sorted those files separately, so you could choose to download a light one or a dark one, and then print it in that color, in that tone. And then send it to us that way. So we had the hair and the jacket in the darker color. And then there's a local artist in Baltimore named Jen Schachter, and she sculpted Rosie in clay, about 8 inches tall. And then again, Direct Dimensions 3D scanned that one with the Pharaoh arm, a blue laser, and it picked up all the details, and we scaled that up to the same 33-inch tall height as the first 3. I'm then chopping them into pieces. We used NetFab and Mesh Mixer to do the slicing, and each project was a little bit different, where we're cutting it for just cubes or rectangular shapes, and I was slicing so I didn't have a line right between the lips or right through the eyeball, trying to move them so it made more sense. And then I deleted all of the solid cube blocks on the inside. That way no one had a super boring print, and there's no real need to have those internal cubes. The George project was 110 parts. We did the whole thing in 3 weeks, including building the website, doing the scanning, printing it, assembling it, and bringing it up to the 3D print show in New York, which was, I think, the end of 2013 or 2014. Ben was 198 parts, and he was sliced in NetFab. We did the George had all of the coordinates engraved digitally. So we have these XYZ coordinate systems. So each block we get, we build one layer at a time, and we can piece the parts together. Because even though that X4, Y3, Z7 is right next to X4, Y4, Z7, it's hard to tell which way's up, and you have to rotate them and orient them properly. And there's 24 different configurations of each block, so it's complicated, even though the two parts are next to each other. It turned out that it was a whole lot of time to do this labeling. For George, 110 parts, and we had 2 people doing it, and we were rotating the parts for best arrangement for printability. But once we scaled up to larger numbers of parts, it was too much work. So we just had people labeling them with a marker, with a Sharpie, and it's still really manual. I'm saving each block from Mesh Mixer or NetFab as an STL and typing in its XYZ coordinates as the file name one at a time manually. But the digitally carving each block was just too much work. So now once you print it out, you write it with a Sharpie. These are about half of the parts that users submitted for the Ben Franklin project. So we made a little photo collage of them. And people customize it. They write little jokes or notes or messages and send it in to us. The first one, we received all the parts at my house. The second one was at my makerspace. The third one was at 3D Scanning Company, the Direct Dimensions one. And then, the fourth one also. The fifth one, which I'll get to in a little bit, was all sent to Santa Fe. So we did a much larger version of this. And people are customizing it. There's a resin print, the bronze fill, the Sharpie colors or swapping filament. And the first 4 sculptures, we used E6000 glue to assemble it. Here's just some of the pictures of the boxes being sent in and loaded up so we can move them. I sorted them into layers. So this is Ben, and it's sorted into the 10 layers. So we solved the puzzle by putting them all in a ring and arranging them based on where they go from its X and Y coordinates. Once you sort them by Z, then you have all the first layer parts together, and then you can arrange them in a circle and glue them together that way. So here's at the last Baltimore node, our previous space is where I assembled this one. So we did each layer one at a time, and then stacked up the layers. And I travel them around, so I have George in the seat with the seatbelt on, because that's kind of an easy way to bring them to different places. And here's the finished George, Ben, and Rosie and Poe. This one actually is a photo from the 2018 East Coast Rep Rap Festival. I took it over there. So the Nation of Makers conference was in Santa Fe 2 weeks ago. And we were contacted to build a huge version. And I thought these 33-inch tall, like meter-tall sculptures were large. You know, each block takes hours to print, and then there's hundreds of them. So I thought that was a big project. But the conference said, hey, we want a big one. We're going to have Adam Savage help, and we want you to make at least a 6-foot-tall sculpture. And it's in 2 months. And I said, that's crazy. I don't know if we can do it. Let's try and do it. So I went and chopped up the same model that we had. I scaled it up. I offset the outside surface inward 6 inches, so I have like a thick wall around the outside. And then saving each one of these parts was still one at a time because it's, you know, I have to give it the XYZ coordinates. So we didn't have an automated process for it. Even though NetFab Ultimate has this built in, it doesn't like seal the mesh. It only gives you the outside surface. So I couldn't use that because you can't print, you know, just the outside surface. So, but it saves the files perfectly, and it labels with XYZ coordinates and saves each STL, just it doesn't seal it, so it wasn't useful. So we put a call out. Adam Savage announced it on his blog. Lemar Fried put it up on Adafruit, and we had a lot of people share it. We had over 700 people help over the 5 or 6 weeks that we were printing parts. And we had them ship all the parts to the Santa Fe makerspace, Make Santa Fe, which is where they were hosting the Nation of Makers conference at the conference center downtown. So this had about 400 or 500 attendees from different makerspaces, people who either organize a makerspace, run a makerspace, own a makerspace, or want their makerspace to improve. So it was a really neat conference, and it was neat to meet all these people there. And now here's about 600 or 700 of the people who printed parts and mailed them in. So everyone on the website gets their like Google logo from their Gmail account sent over, and then there's a little number next to each picture of each person of how many parts they submitted. So Make Santa Fe had a room. They stored all these big boxes. Those are 4 foot by 4 foot by 1 foot boxes, and they were all filled up with all these parts. It's so many parts. Each layer was like hundreds of parts. So each layer of the new sculpture was about the size of one of the ones that I brought here. I made these blueprints, so each outline you could lay out, and it was 21 layers, so we had 21 different blueprints of each 3 foot by 5 foot sheet. People went through, found the parts, laid them out. So these next pictures are all just of the different blueprints. And one neat trick that I did for this project was I made sure that the components each were rectangular prisms and not cubes. They were like taller than they were longer and wider. So that way we knew automatically which way was up or down. And then if you looked at the paper, it would tell you kind of which way was up or down most of the time. So that saved a lot of assembly, a lot of work. Because of the size and cost of glue and weight and number of parts we were applying it, we used a caulk gun and the Loctite. It was like a Loctite power grab all-purpose adhesive. And bought a few cases of these tubes. The conference gave us about a 20 foot by 20 foot area and coated the floor with plastic. And we went and laid these all out and built it. We started a little bit Friday night, built it all day Saturday, and then 6 hours Sunday. So all these parts, all these layers, we had about 40 people helping over the weekend. And it was just, everything was working. We came across some problems, but we were able to fix them as we went. One of them was interesting because any part that was a curved surface on the bottom couldn't be assembled that way. So it's not something I thought of before, so we had to flip it over upside down. So like the bottom of her elbow, we couldn't build that way, so we had to flip it upside down to glue it, but that made our blueprints kind of mirrored, so we had to transpose them in one of the directions. We then started building. We needed it to be movable, so we have it in a few different sections. So this is the bottom section, and it was then mounted to a platform. We're putting on the caulk, the glue, spreading it around. It was really neat to work with Adam, so he helped all day Sunday, was gluing parts together with us, and they were documenting it. So that should be up in about a week or two, up on Tested. He has a video that they're editing together. So there's the plinth. It was like a 4 foot by 4 foot base or so. For this project, all the colors were skin tone, so we just did a call out for skin tone colors. And then I don't have too many of this part because I was in there building and stacking the layers. But it ended up being over 6 foot tall. I'm estimating 450 pounds. And it was just massive. It's the biggest thing I've ever made, so it was really neat. So that's a normal print all the way on the left, like a 6-inch tall miniature Rosie the Riveter. The full color one you can see here, which is the 33-inch one that's at my booth behind me. And then the finished one on the right, which was I think like 6 foot 1 inch. We then had the fellows from Make Santa Fe move it to the New Mexico Museum of History. So it's set up there for the next 6 months at least, maybe a little longer, depending on how it goes. And then there's me and Jen with the final sculpture. Yeah, please help. So if you guys have a printer or access to a printer, then you can sign up at wethebuilders.com. If you don't, please meet someone this weekend who has, because I feel like everyone has access to a 3D printer. We've been doing one build a year. After this conference, after this build where it was like so many people helping, we have had several groups reach out to us asking for us to do this kind of thing at their event. So it's something that we're interested in doing as long as we can get it all to work out. And we'd love your help. We literally can't do the project without people like you. So it'd be really neat to have you tell your friends and help out with future projects. And there's the contact information for me and We the Builders at the bottom there. And I have, I guess, time for questions. We have 10 minutes or so if you guys have any. Yeah, thanks. Oh. Who here helped on the project? Anybody? We have some here. That's really neat. Yeah, we had like over 750 people because there was teams and people building and then all the parts. I have personal cards for my business. I don't have We the Builders cards. But just sign up, go to wethebuilders.com, and there's like a sign up button. We have a Facebook group also. It's like at We the Builders. Yeah, thanks. The question was, is the file available for the smaller version? We do have them, but they're not easy to act. Yeah, in one piece for the small version, the little pink one in the corner there. We do have the files for all 4 sculptures so far. They're not like easily accessible on the website, but it's something that I need to put up. You can get to it if you go to like the file preview on the website, but it's not like a hot link URL or anything like that. You have to like right-click view source and grab them. Yes, we have heard that feedback. We just haven't uploaded them that way yet. Yeah, if you email me and ask for it, then I'll be able to post it. They're there, but you have to hit the F12 view source and go through and grab the Amazon link. So it's not, like the website's not. So We the Builders is a totally nonprofit, like not registered nonprofit, just like a project that we do. So it's just me and Marty making the website and building the parts and getting people to sculpt and print and without like funding. So it's a lot of work to do. But right now it's up on the website as the preview URL for the in-browser STL viewer. Yeah. Yeah, Drew. Well, I'm estimating it's 10,000 hours of printing for the big Rosie because it's 2,600 parts and approximately 4 hours per part. So it's around 10,000 or 11,000, and then around the same for dollars of shipping costs to get them to New Mexico. And then I guess my time was about 80 hours of prep and getting all the files ready, and then the building time. So, yeah, a lot of hours went into it. I don't have a specific count of number of countries, but I know we had parts from every continent except for Antarctica, and then a lot of parts from Europe, and we had Singapore and China and South America. There was a few different countries that submitted parts: Saudi Arabia, Italy. Yeah, a lot of places. Yeah. For the question was the shape's not solid, so how did we do it? How do we know how much material to take out? The first one, for George, there's no inside. George was sculpted from marble at that scale. So the back of George is kind of hollowed out as a post. So there really is no depth to George beyond what you see, because it was carved from marble and was thick and they needed to make it lighter. For Ben, since we scaled it up, we introduced this extra internal area. So I just deleted every block that was a solid block. So there's no solid parts inside Ben. It's just the blocks that were on the surface. So they're about 3 or so inches thick all the way around. For Rosie, at the small scale, there's some hollow parts, but it was just, again, wherever there was a solid block, I deleted it. Once I scaled it up for the big Rosie, I made a judgment call, and I said, well, I think if this sculpture is 6 inches thick on average, so I'll offset the whole part in, so I have 2 or 3 blocks going deep in any direction. So it's got that 6-inch offset. And then we built an armature inside. I'm not sure if I had a picture up here of the armature, but if you look at her left arm there, which is in the bottom of the frame, you can see a white rectangle, and that's where a 2x4 was slid in. So it was kind of built around 2-inch dowel rods and 2x4s, so we could build a internal armature. Yeah, Adam Savage is a cool guy. You can see the hole for the dowel rod in the arm in the front, bottom left of this photo. So that hole there is, I think, 2.5 inches, because we had a 2-inch dowel rod in there with some space. So it's really massive. This is some of the support 2x4 beams inside there, and the post going up. Occasionally we had a part that we would reject because either the color was very wrong or the print was poor, but for the most part, all the parts that got sent in got used. We send out emails because you're supposed to print the part and then send it to us, and if we don't receive it or don't hear from you or never got hey, that part shipped, we need it, then we'll send you some emails, and if we don't hear back, then we release the part back to the pool and some other people can print it. But a lot of those we end up receiving the part anyway, so we have duplicates. So then we kind of just, whichever one we grab first of the two is the one that gets included. But I think it was about, I don't know, less than 5%. Great. I will be at the table until the end of the day and then a little bit yesterday. So if you have more questions, you can reach out to me then.